Welcome to Darkwatch Stories, where we bring to life the chills, the shadows, and the mysteries that linger in the dark. If you enjoy spine-tingling stories and want to support the journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now, sit back, dim the lights, and let's step into tonight's story. My name's Jack, a volunteer ranger posted in a forgotten patch of Appalachia that maps don't even bother to mark. Sounds noble, right? It's not. Most days, I sit in a crooked wooden chair on the porch of a government shack that smells like old boots and burnt coffee, watching the trees sway and hoping nothing out there decides to move closer. I spend my days keeping clueless hikers from wandering into places they were never meant to find. Truth is, I shouldn't even be here. By law, I belong in a concrete cell, not the woods. 5 years for a robbery gone wrong, no weapons, no victims, just two fools chasing quick money. The judge said I was a cautionary tale. Maybe he was right. Out here, I've had plenty of time to think about how fast bad choices grow roots. The judge wanted me to reflect on who I wanted to be. The Institute had a faster plan. They needed men for the red zones, people too reckless to say no. I fit perfectly. So I traded prison bars for ranger greens. Now I live in a half-broken cabin with flickering lights and a bitter coffee pot that never sleeps. Freedom, sure, but it hums like punishment. Our gear's simple: a crackling radio, faded maps, and a corkboard covered in pins and tangled string that only makes sense after months in the field. Sometimes a delivery guy braves the road to bring pizza up from the valley. The group that hired me never posts job ads. They just appear when they need someone. They call themselves the Institute, and out here, they're the only thing holding back the dark. Most folks would call them myths, but I've seen what hides beyond the fog. Things that move wrong, breathe wrong, things that make your instincts scream before your mind can catch up. They linger where sunlight fades and compasses spin wild. Roger and I, we're the first response. We tag what we can, mark the trails, and pray the hunters get there before something breaks loose. Roger's the kind of man the mountains themselves seem to respect, rough, loud, but steady. He's been here longer than any map remembers, barking orders and fixing problems before I even notice them. When the real trouble comes, he doesn't flinch. He just grumbles, grabs his rifle, and says, "Guess it's our mess again." Roger's rough edges hide a strange kind of warmth. Beneath the gravel in his voice and the limp in his stride, there's someone who's seen too much, but still cares enough to teach. He doesn't say much about his past, but every scar has a story, and every silence feels like a warning. Out here, that's as close to family as I'll ever get. From day one, Roger made it clear this wasn't a place for weakness. The man lives on caffeine and stubbornness, and somehow that keeps the whole outpost running. I've seen him climb ridges in storms that would send younger rangers packing. He may creak when he walks, but out here he's unshakable. The kind of man the forest itself seems to obey. Roger's a man out of time, half legend, half stubborn old wolf. He trusts what he can see, not what a screen tells him. When he laughs, it sounds like the earth itself is groaning. Sometimes I think the forest prefers him that way, analog, unchanging, carved from the same stone as these mountains. The kind of man no technology could ever replace. To Roger, the job isn't just work, it's a creed. He treats every broken sensor, every strange track in the mud, like it's sacred duty. The man's intuition borders on supernatural. He can smell danger before the radios even buzz. Sometimes I think the Institute didn't recruit Roger. It just built itself around him. The Institute isn't some myth whispered around campfires. It's real and far bigger than anyone imagines. Hidden bases, coded transmissions, people who vanish from public records. It started as a rumor, grew into a shadow network, guarding the forgotten edges of the map. If you stumble onto it by accident, congratulations, you've already seen too much. The Institute runs like a ghost government, no faces, no names, just orders. Every ranger, every hunter has their place in the chain. We're not heroes, We're maintenance workers for reality, patching the cracks before anyone sees through. Some creatures aren't evil, they're just lost, pushed too far from wherever they came from. We keep them hidden, so the world keeps spinning. Roger and I aren't sent to kill, we're sent to notice. When something stirs where it shouldn't, we're already there, notebooks in hand, cameras humming. The real hunters come later when it's too late for warnings. Out here, we're the thin line between the monsters and the towns that sleep peacefully, never knowing how close danger gets. Most days feel like routine, quiet woods, cold coffee, and nothing but static on the radio. But the silence never lasts. One wrong noise, one broken branch, and you realize the woods are watching back. Out here, boredom is a blessing, because when things get interesting, people don't usually make it back to tell the story. Some days, the forest feels wrong too, still too aware. You start noticing things that shouldn't exist. Claw marks 20 feet high, feathers that pulse faintly like they're still alive, or the smell of copper where no blood should be. Roger always says, if you find a scene that looks staged, walk away. But sometimes the forest doesn't give you that choice. It just watches to see what you'll do next. The cabin isn't much, but it's home. The walls creak when the wind howls, and the heater sounds like it's counting down its final breaths. Nights get long out here, especially when the fog rolls in. Roger calls it the mountain's blanket. I call it what it really is, a warning. Because when the fog thickens, that's when things start moving out there. From the porch, the forest looks calm, endless waves of green under a soft haze. But Roger says the view lies. Pretty things hide ugly truths, he likes to mutter. Sometimes we sit there in silence, watching the fog slide between the trees like it's alive. And when the birds go quiet all at once, that silence feels heavier than any scream. That's when you know something's watching from the red zone. Out here, reality bends in quiet ways. A shadow that moves when you're still a whisper, that repeats your name just off the wind. Roger says rules keep you alive. I say writing does. Putting it on paper reminds me what's real, what's not, and what's better left unspoken. Some nights the journal feels less like a record and more like a warning, one written for whoever comes next. Every story starts the same. A quiet morning, a cup of bitter coffee, and the illusion that today will be normal. But out here, normal doesn't last. The woods have their own rhythm, their own hunger. So I write not to remember, but to survive the remembering. My name is Jack, a ranger by trade, a witness by curse, and these are the truths the mountains tried to bury. It wasn't just its size that froze me, it was how wrong it looked, how unnatural. Like the forest had tried to build a creature and failed halfway. Each movement creaked like wood under strain, and its breath came out thick and wet. For a second I thought it was dying. Then it turned its head toward me, and I realized it was only waiting. At first I thought he'd seen a bear, maybe a fallen hiker. But then I caught the faint shimmer of movement beneath the broken pine. The thing wasn't supposed to be there. Nothing natural moved like that. My stomach dropped as the mud around it pulsed, breathing in slow waves. Roger's voice dropped low. "You see it now?" he asked. I wished I didn't. Roger didn't answer right away. He just crouched, eyes narrowing like he was confirming a nightmare. The thing blinked or tried to, and the skin around its sockets cracked like old bark. A thick hiss escaped its throat, more mechanical than alive. "That Roger," finally said. Voice steady but cold, is why we don't hike off trail. My heart hammered so loud I almost didn't hear him. Roger didn't even glance at me, but his tone sharpened like a blade. "Don't," he muttered. "You shoot its screams. If it screams, others come." The crawler strained again, bones creaking under the log's weight. A dark, tar-like liquid seeped into the mud beneath it, spreading in slow ripples. I froze, hands still on the gun, realizing we weren't just watching it. We were trespassing on its pain. The stench burned my throat, heavy and chemical. like breathing in rot and smoke. The crawler's chest rose unevenly, each breath wheezing through a mouth that wasn't meant to exist. Roger stepped closer, unfazed, scribbling something in his notepad. "Remember that smell," he said quietly. "If you ever catch it again, you're already too close." I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to gag. I barely caught the book before it hit my chest. The cover was scarred, edges frayed, like it had seen decades of rain and fire. "What is this?" I asked. Roger didn't answer right away, just watched the crawler twitch under the log. "Field guide," he finally said. "You'll need it sooner than you think." His tone made it sound less like advice and more like a warning. "Belonged to a hunter before me," Roger said, eyes distant like he was remembering Ghost, "and another before her. Now it's yours." The weight of the book suddenly felt heavier in my hands, not from age, but from history. Every page was a warning, written by someone who probably hadn't lived long enough to finish it. I ran my thumb along the worn pages, stopping at crude sketches of claws, eyes, and shapes that didn't belong in nature. Some entries were marked with red X's, others with circles and notes like "avoid after rain" or "don't look it in the eye." It wasn't just a guidebook, it was a survival manual written in fear and blood. The graphite scraped softly as I drew my hand shaking just enough to ruin the clean lines. Roger watched quietly, only nodding, when I labeled the injuries. "Good," he muttered. "Write what you see, not what you think." I added notes about the sound it made, that awful hiss, the yellow eyes, the smell. Out here, every detail mattered. A single mistake in description could get the next ranger killed. They moved like a practiced machine, no hesitation, no emotion. One of them scraped a sample of the black fluid into a vial, while another whispered numbers into his headset. When they finally drove off, the air felt colder, emptier, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. Roger just muttered. Another day, another nightmare, and poured himself more coffee. Roger once told me that if you ever hear branches snapping low to the ground, it's already too late. Crawlers don't rush, they savor. They twist bones, pull bodies apart one limb at a time. Watching how they move, you realize they're not hunting for hunger. They're practicing, learning, getting better each time. Roger said the scene didn't look like a fight, it looked like feeding. Tools scattered, tents ripped open, claw marks carved deep into the soil. One of the crewmen's boots was still standing upright, foot gone. They hunt smart, Roger told me. Wait for noise, movement, confidence. That stuck with me. Ever since silence in the woods doesn't feel peaceful anymore, it feels like warning. One entry caught my eye, written in shaky handwriting, the ink smeared like it had been done in a hurry. "Don't linger near bridges after dusk," it warned. Another note mentioned strange footprints circling a ranger station ending abruptly at the tree line. Reading those words in the dim cabin light, I realized this wasn't just a guide, it was a graveyard of other people's close calls. Roger didn't answer right away. He was staring into his cup of coffee, the steam curling around his face like mist. Finally, he said, "Too many. And the ones we know are the lucky ones." His tone was flat, almost tired. He set the mug down and looked at me. You start naming them, you start realizing how much the world's been lying to itself. Roger didn't look up from his pot as he stirred. "Usually stay deep valley," he continued. "You'll know 'em if you hear the clicking." That word clicking stuck in my head like a splinter. The way he said it, quiet but sure, made it sound less like a warning and more like a promise. That line hit harder than I expected. I stared at the empty page, realizing it wasn't a lack of research, it was a list of the dead. Every blank space meant someone hadn't made it back to fill it in. I closed the book slowly and looked at Roger, who just muttered, "Best way to learn is not firsthand." Roger leaned over my shoulder as I wrote, scanning each line without saying a word. When I finished, he grunted in approval. "You take neat notes for a convict," he said, half teasing, half impressed. I just shrugged, Closing the book. Out here, neat notes could mean the difference between surviving and vanishing. Roger's tone was flat, matter of fact, like he was talking about the weather instead of monsters that ate people. He stirred his noodles, eyes fixed on the steam rising from the pot. "Doesn't matter how far they wander," he said. "They always find their way back to what feeds them." His words hung heavy in the cabin, mixing with a faint scent of coffee and cold iron. Roger's words hit harder than I expected. "We don't look up," he repeated, quieter this time. "That's how they get close, not magic, just patience." The wind rattled the windows, and for a second I imagined something out there listening. I didn't say anything, just wrote it down before I forgot. The silence stretched until even the heater's clicking sounded too loud. Roger didn't blink, his eyes fixed somewhere deep beyond the tree line. You feel that he finally muttered. I didn't, but I nodded anyway. Sometimes when Roger stared like that, it meant something out there had started moving, and we'd know soon enough. That night marked the line between curiosity and fear. Once you've seen something like that, the woods never sound the same again. Every gust of wind feels like a warning, every rustle like a breath too close. I didn't sleep much after that, just listened, waiting for the forest to breathe again. Roger said, "If I wanted to be more than just another body in uniform, I'd have to tag one myself. That's how you prove you belong out here," he told me. The thought of getting that close made my stomach twist, but I didn't argue. Out here, courage isn't about fighting, it's about staying still when every instinct tells you to run. Roger liked to say we were the eyes of the Institute, the part that actually bled for the data. Every report, every sketch in those files came from someone like us crawling through mud with a tracker and a death wish. The scientists might study monsters, but we were the ones who had to look them in the eye first. Roger drilled the codes into my head. Blue meant observe, not engage. Still, even a docile creature could end you if you got careless. He said the key was respect. Never underestimate something older than civilization. Out here, curiosity gets you closer, but arrogance gets you buried. I took that lesson seriously from day one. Roger said code yellow was where courage met stupidity. "They're not evil," he told me, "just unpredictable like lightning." The mossback was one of those. He warned me to stay calm, move slow, and never make eye contact longer than 3 seconds. If it looks at you too long, he said, you'll start to feel like prey. The air under that bridge felt heavy, thick with rot and river fog. Even before I saw it move, I could smell the decay, wet moss, and old meat. Roger crouched beside me, whispering that mossbacks liked echoes, said it helped them listen for movement. I remember thinking that meant it could already hear us breathing. As the light faded, the forest went dead silent. No crickets, no frogs, just the steady drip of water from the bridge beams. My palms were slick with sweat as I checked the tracker. Roger stayed behind, with the rifle eyes fixed on the riverbank. Remember, he muttered, slow and quiet, "If it notices you first, you're done." The creature's back shimmered faintly under the moonlight, every breath making the moss ripple like a living tide. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, louder than the river itself. I could see its jaw flex, that patch of fungus pulsing as it inhaled. Roger's voice crackled softly in my earpiece. "Easy, Jack. You're in its world now." For a moment, I froze every instinct, screaming to run. The jaw twitched as if it still remembered how to speak, a thin trail of water leaking from between its teeth. The creature tilted its head, sniffing the air, and I swear its eyes locked on me through the dark. I steadied my breathing, clutching the tracker like a lifeline, reminding myself I'm here to tag, not die. I backed away slowly, every muscle tight as wire. The mossback shifted once, groaning low like wood bending under strain, but it didn't follow. My boots squelched in the mud as I crawled backward, keeping my eyes locked on it until I reached the bank. Roger's voice again, calmer this time. "You did good, kid. Now move." I laughed nervously, still shaking from the adrenaline. Roger scribbled a note on his pad, the corner of his mouth twitching, like he almost smiled. The night air felt heavier than before, thick with damp moss and the echo of that thing's breathing. For the first time, I realized what the job really meant: survive long enough to write it down. He emerged from the tree line, like dusk taking form, silent, deliberate, and strange. No uniform, no badge, only the look of someone who'd seen too much and still kept walking. Roger called him Carver, and the name fit. He carved through fear the way light cuts fog. In that moment, the word hunter stopped being a line in a handbook. It became a heartbeat. Steady and dangerous. The moment that call came through, the room froze. Roger's coffee hit the table untouched, and the air changed heavy alert. Carver didn't wait for orders. He just grabbed his pack like he'd been expecting it all along. No maps, no chatter, just motion. I followed to the doorway and caught his eyes, calm but sharp enough to cut through panic. For the first time, I realized hunters didn't chase glory. They chased what everyone else ran from. Her voice cracked like glass every time she said it. The father's hands trembled, knuckles, white eyes empty. Roger tried calming them, but even he looked uneasy. I'd seen panic before, but this was different, too certain, too vivid. Whatever took that boy wasn't rumor or wildlife. You could feel it in the air like the forest itself was holding its breath. Roger's jaw tightened, and I felt the shift, the kind that meant the rulebook just went useless. Trolls weren't local, not this deep, not this season. If one had crossed the line, something bigger was moving beneath the surface. I checked the map anyway, tracing valleys and ridges, pretending it mattered. Roger didn't look up when he said, "Pack the gear." "We're going." He didn't ask. He just scanned the room once, eyes steady, reading the fear like a map he'd seen before. Mud still clung to his boots, and his coat smelled of rain and smoke. When Roger looked up, their silence spoke louder than any greeting. The stranger nodded, as if confirming something unspoken, and said softly, "Show me where it happened." Carver listened without interrupting eyes, half-lidded like he was replaying the scene in his head. When Roger finished, he stayed quiet for a heartbeat, then glanced toward the window where the ridgeline disappeared into fog. His hand tightened on the strap of his pack. Too close to water, he muttered mostly to himself. Then louder, "I'll find the boy." Even after they vanished into the fog, his presence lingered like static after lightning. I paced the porch, half listening to the radio crackle, half wondering what kind of man walks toward a monster without blinking. Roger poured himself more coffee, muttering, "That's Carver for you." I didn't answer. Part of me wished I'd followed just to see what courage like that looked like up close. Carver didn't say a word, just handed the boy to his mother and kept walking until the shadows swallowed him. The wind howled through the trees, carrying a sound that wasn't quite natural, half grief, half warning. Roger's hand went to his radio, but he didn't call it in. Some things didn't need a report. They just needed to be survived. He slung his pack over one shoulder, eyes distant, like they were still somewhere in those trees. "Titles don't matter," he muttered, tightening a worn strap. "You just do the job and hope it's enough." His tone carried no pride, no weight of legend, just fatigue carved into purpose. I wanted to ask what he'd seen out there, but his silence said it all. Monsters weren't the only things that haunted these woods. Up close, he looked carved from weather itself. Scarred hands, calm eyes that had seen too much to fear anymore. Pleasure I managed, but he was already turning away, shouldering his pack like a man late for destiny. Roger watched him go quiet, pride in his voice. That's what a real hunter looks like. Roger said Carver didn't wait for orders, he just moved like instinct wearing boots. Found the troll's pit by smell, not luck. Burned its eyes with a flare, snared it, and never looked back. That's what separates hunters from the rest of us, Roger muttered, staring into the firelight. They don't do it for glory. They do it because someone has to. The memo spread through the ranks like smoke. short, clinical, and terrifying between the lines. Creatures crossing borders wasn't supposed to happen. Each zone had its balance, its rules. Now those rules were cracking. Roger pinned the notice to the board beside our maps, eyes dark. When monsters start migrating, he said quietly, it's not the woods that change, it's the world. That night, the wind never settled. The forest groaned like it was shifting in its sleep, restless, aware. I stared at the maps, lines, and borders that suddenly meant nothing. Roger poured another cup of coffee, eyes on the dark ridge. Get some rest, he said. But neither of us did. The woods were already awake. When the next call came in, I thought it'd be another legend stepping out of the mist. Instead, it was me, gripping the radio, realizing there was no cavalry this time. Roger just said, "You know the drill," and that was it. The quiet between us felt heavier than fear. I wasn't a hunter, not yet, but the woods didn't care about titles, only survival. It felt almost peaceful, the kind of day that tricks you into lowering your guard. Kids' laughter drifted through the pines, and Roger hummed some off-key tune behind me. I remember thinking it might actually stay quiet this time. Then the radio crackled, sharp, urgent. The kind of static that means trouble found you before you found it. The words hit harder than any alarm. Roger was already moving, grabbing the pack and maps before the transmission ended. Cooper's Ridge, of all places. I felt the chill crawl up my spine just hearing it. That area wasn't on the public trail anymore for a reason. Kids 9, Roger muttered, loading his rifle. We move now or we find a body later. Roger followed protocol, at least for the first 30 seconds. His report was crisp, professional, but I could see the tension in his jaw. We both knew 20 minutes was too long for a lost kid near Cooper's Ridge. The forest there didn't wait. He hung up the radio, eyes already on the tree line. Screw waiting, he said. We're moving. Every step felt like a countdown. The forest swallowed sound, even my breath. I could still hear Roger's voice faint over the radio, steady grounding me. The air grew colder, heavier, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. I gripped the flare tight, one thought, echoing in my head if the boy was still alive. I had to reach him before something else did. The sound of its breathing was thick, uneven, like air forced through water. Each inhale made the mud tremble. The kid's eyes widened when he saw my face change. He didn't dare turn around. I drew the flare, hands slick with sweat, heart pounding so loud I swore it could hear me. The thing twitched, sniffing the air. I counted to 3, struck the cap, and prayed the light would burn before it reached us. Branches tore at my jacket as I ran the flare's red glow, bouncing off wet leaves like veins of fire. The creature screamed behind us, a sound that clawed straight through bone. The boy clung to me, silent but shaking. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The only thing that mattered was forward through the trees, through the fear, until the light of the flare began to fade. The forest blurred into streaks of gray and green, every breath a knife in my chest. The creature's wails echoed closer, then farther, then close again, like it was circling, playing with the chase. The kid's grip on my neck tightened. He didn't cry, just held on. I stumbled through roots and mud, praying Roger was still up on that ridge, watching the same nightmare unfold from above. Relief hit slow like thawing ice. The forest felt alive again, wind rustling leaves, birds daring to sing. I crouched beside the kid, checked his pulse just to remind myself he was real. His small voice finally broke the silence. Was it gone? I didn't answer. I just looked toward the fog line where shadows still lingered and whispered, for now. Their spotless uniforms and steady steps made it look like a drill, not a rescue. I sat there in the dirt, blood and mud drying on my sleeves, watching them photograph the flare casing like it mattered more than the kid. Roger stood a few yards away, arms crossed, jaw tight. When one of them thanked us, he just muttered, "You're welcome 20 minutes late." Instead, Roger just sat beside me on the steps, chewing in silence. The forest hummed faintly around us, calm again. He didn't need to say it. I could feel the approval in the quiet. After a while, he handed me the crust and muttered, "Next time, try not to make me proud. It's bad for my reputation." After that, the silence between us felt different, less like discipline, more like understanding. Roger started asking for my opinion before making a call, even let me mark the maps myself. The trust was quiet but solid, built from near death and burnt coffee. For the first time since I put on the uniform, I didn't feel like a replacement. I felt like a ranger. 5 years sounded simple, until I realized how much of myself I'd left out there. The ridges, the fog, the creatures they'd carved, their marks deeper than any sentence ever could. My field guide was more scar tissue than paper, now filled with truths no report would print. Somewhere between the first tag and the last night watch, I stopped counting the days and started belonging to the mountains. The cabin door creaked shut behind me, and for the first time the silence felt heavier than the woods. Roger stood by the truck, coffee steaming and the cold air eyes fixed on the horizon like it might talk back. I waited for a lecture, a farewell, something. Instead, he just handed me a mug. "No one really leaves," he said. "You just run out of shifts." We stood there for a while, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. The trees bent under the wind, whispering like they knew things we didn't. Roger took one last sip of his coffee and said, "Just remember, not every opportunity's worth chasing." I smiled, unsure if he meant jobs or monsters. Maybe out here they were the same thing. The breeze carried that old scent of rain and pine, the kind that settles in your bones. For a heartbeat, I wondered if the mountains really did remember names or deaths. Roger's smile faded, replaced by that knowing look. "If they're watching," he said quietly, "it's 'cause you've earned their attention." And somehow that didn't feel like comfort. The path down felt both lighter and heavier freedom, with a weight I couldn't name. Each step echoed against the valley, like the woods were memorizing my leaving. Maybe one day I'd hear that echo calling me back. The Institute might close your file, but it never forgets your footprints. Out here, endings just mean the story's waiting for a sequel. If you're reading this, and you're like me, then you already know the woods don't forgive curiosity. You'll hear whispers that sound like wind, see eyes that aren't reflections. But if you keep reading, it means you've decided to stay. Just remember, knowledge is a light, but it also draws things that hate the dawn. Use it wisely. Out here, the field guide is more than paper, it's a compass, a confession, and sometimes a last will. Every note you write adds another heartbeat to it. Don't rely on the Institute's clean reports. They're written by people who've never heard a crawler breathe. Trust the dirt, the noise, the silence. The woods teach in whispers, and if you listen long enough, they'll tell you what's coming long before the monsters do. Roger's jacket still smelled faintly of pine and smoke, the kind of scent that never really leaves you. I wear it like a memory stitched into fabric, a promise to the quiet things that lurk past the fog. Maybe I'm done serving the Institute, but I'm not done watching the woods. If you see that old jacket out there, don't wave. Just listen. The forest always answers first. The radio clicked off, leaving only the wind and the whisper of pines. Somewhere beyond the fog, a new story was already waiting to begin. Thank you for listening to Darkwatch Stories. If this story gave you chills, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so we can keep bringing you more. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware of what might be watching in the dark.